All right, so really quick disclaimer here. As somebody who teaches programming, I like to be transparent about my thought process and how I decide on just the order to teach things in. Because there's often dilemmas or there's concepts that depend on one another, and you need to teach all of them in order to use any of them. And one example of that really is ranges and for loops. So ranges exist on their own, but I really have not seen them used outside of for loops. So you need to know for loops to use ranges. But then to know for loops, traditionally you use them with ranges, at least until we talk about lists and dictionaries. So we're kind of at a crossroads where it's like, do we teach ranges and not do anything with them until we learn for loops? Or do I teach for loops and just kind of really quickly say, we'll come back to ranges, don't panic, which is what I ended up doing. But we're now going to talk about ranges. So with that long preamble over with, ranges, as we saw in the last video, are just simple ways of generating sequences of numbers. So not random numbers, but sequences that are ordered in a particular way. If we look at the documentation, it says that the range type represents an immutable sequence of numbers and is commonly used for looping a specific number of times in for loops. So that's really the key thing. It's so commonly used for loops that the documentation actually says this is what it's pretty much only used for. So back in the slides, here's a visualization of a range, just a slice of the number line. But it's not as straightforward as only generating numbers starting at 0 going up to 6. There's a lot of different variations of how we can use it. So the first example actually only takes one number, and it represents the end point. So this will generate a range starting at 0. If you only provide one number, it assumes it starts at 0, and it goes up to that last number but does not include it. So it's exclusive. So it starts at 0 and it goes up to 6 inclusive, which is the range we see here. Alternatively, you can pass in two numbers, 1 and 8 in this case, and it will start at 1, including 1, and stop at 8, excluding 8. So it can be a bit confusing, but just remember, it never includes that last number. So this gives us 1 to 7, which is how we printed out the numbers 1 to 7 in the last video. Next, there are two that are a bit different. So we pass in a third number, and this third number is known as the step or interval. It basically means how many numbers to skip or what the interval is in our sequence. So in this example, we generate the numbers from 1 to 10, not including 10, but we skip 2 every time. So we start at 1, we skip 2 and go to 3, and then 5, then 7, then 9. So it gives us the odd numbers from 1 to 10, not including 10. Which isn't odd anyways. And then we have -1, which it's the same thing, except that negative is going to allow us to move downwards. So we go from 7 to 0, and -1, so we're going to step down 1 each time. So the end result is that we get the numbers from 7 to 1, and it does not include 0, just like all the others are exclusive. Okay, so if I hop over to Python 3, the first thing I'll show you, you can just declare a range or create a range like this. Range, let's go from 0 to 9. I hit enter, and you actually don't see anything useful. You don't see the numbers it's generated. In this case, we see range 0 to 10, which this is a shortcut for. But that doesn't mean that we can't see the numbers. If we wanted to, we need to type list. So I'm going to save that to a variable. I'll just call it r equals range 10. And then I can run list r. And now it shows me the numbers that have been generated. So let's do a more complex example. Let's do nums equals range, and we'll go from 1 to 10, skipping 2 every time. And if we just look at nums, it's exactly what we've seen. But if I run list nums, now I can see it's 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So we're skipping 2, we get odd numbers. So if we did a for loop over this range, it would run 5 times, and whatever the item, the variable we provided, would be set equal to 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So let me show you that now. I'll quit out of here, and I'll make a new file called range.py. And in here, let's start by just doing a for num in, and this is the simplest one we could do, something like this. And we can print num. Very simple. And we'll run Python 3 range numbers.py, and I get 0 to 9 printed out. But as we've seen, we can also do things like this. Let's go from 10 to 20, and this time it'll be even numbers because we're starting at 10 rather than 1, which we saw earlier. So if I run it now, I get 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. It doesn't include 20 because it's exclusive. So all I want you to take away from this is that when we write this range with whatever we pass in, it's going to generate a sequence of numbers. Not always, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can be odd number intervals, or we could even do, by fives. We could go from 0 to 100 by fives. And there we go. We're counting by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. And right now, we are just printing things, which I realize is trivial. We're just printing the exact number, but the focus is on ranges. But eventually, the focus will not be on printing numbers. We'll be doing much more complex things, operations with the actual numbers that we're generating.